Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunnavari Paschatya Desatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Asturu Shishimat, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Asturu Shishimat, His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Anantikoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Nam Acharya Sridas Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Sisi Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radhikund Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Navadip Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So today we're going to be reading from the Transcendental Diary by Harisori Prabhu, Volume 3, July 1st, 1976. I'll read and I'll comment as I go along, where necessary. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Prabhupada didn't take a walk today, and his Srimad Bhagavatam discourse lasted only 15 minutes. He is still weak and congested with mucus. But whether he speaks for a long time or a short one, he is potent and effective. He can make his point in a few words or extensively. His meaning is always clear. So sometimes, Prabhupada would speak for an hour sometimes in the early days, sometimes for 45 minutes. But as it got along, he didn't speak too long. Some lectures are 15 minutes, some are 30 minutes. But the message is very, very clear and effective. But generally in speaking, we have to know our audience when we speak also, and how much they can absorb. Because when people start, becoming fidgety and things like that, gives you an idea that it's time to stop. And, we have to stop at some point. But generally we find sometimes devotees themselves, when they speak, and they're enjoying the subject matter and they would like to speak more, but the audience are not ready to hear also. So therefore one has to know the audience. And one should test the audience, to see, if they really are listening or hearing what the philosophy, or they're just waiting for the class to be over, which is common in most cases. I was reading a book called Compassion some while back on a train in a trip that I was doing from Vrindavan to Puri. Many hours. I think I was on the train for almost 36 hours traveling, and I was reading this book on compassion. And one of the points was made by the author was that sometimes you have a devotee, a visiting devotee will start speaking, and then it'll come to around 8:30 or almost the breakfast time. He'll say, "I have some nectar to say," and and the audience now are ready to leave. But then, he'll try to get permission from the audience, but he will continue speaking what he wants to say. So, that is not compassion, because the people have come in the morning, they followed a full morning program, they're sitting on the floor, they may have other things to do at the time when the time is up. So, that's not compassion. So therefore, sometimes when we're speaking, we have to know the audience, we know what we have to say, and we have to stop. Because not everybody is Maharaj Parikshit. You may be Sukadev Goswami. But not everybody is Maharaj Parikshit who can sit for a long period of time. So Prabhupada, even in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was compiling the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he could run into many volumes, but he was trying to make it concise, readable. And there in the Adi Leela, it stated in the first chapter, 106, that essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. So we have to follow that. So then reading on, the verses stated that no person bereft of knowledge of God has been able to free himself from material bondage. Prahlad therefore advised his young school friends to avoid the association of such person and live only with devotees of Narayan, because their goal of life is liberation from material existence. Prabhupada told us that although the goal is to go back home, back to Godhead, if we have even a slight material desire, then we may have to take birth on some higher planet. He said these were described in Srimad Bhagavatam, and it disparaged that the scientists once again for their mechanical attempts to reach such places. Very, very opulent. We cannot imagine even how they are opulent. The roads are made of pearls, diamonds, coral, and at the same time, no sinful man is admitted there. Everyone highly elevated, pious. There is no crookedness. There is no enviousness. You'll find this description in the 8th canto of Shvargaloka. We cannot imagine even. But this is also within the material world. We can go there if we want to go. Just like they are trying, the modern so-called scientists go to the moon planet, Mars. According to Shastra, these planets are bedecked with such descriptive facilities. They are also within the heavenly planets. But these rascals are going and they find nobody there, and they take some dust and come back. This is their success. They do not know that they can enter even there. They are not meant for ordinary persons. So from this, there's so many points that can be raised. Prabhupada spoke of material desires, spiritual progress, the nature of the higher realms, the higher planets, or the spiritual realm. So material desires and rebirth, when we look at that, he is explaining that if you have the slight attachment, then it may prevent you from returning to the spiritual world. He may be born in the higher planets like Swarga Loka, and he'll be having an opulent life, but he's still within the material world. So what do we understand from this? What do we take from this? That spiritual perfection requires complete detachment from material desires. And only when we overcome such desires, we can enter or re-enter into the spiritual world. The second point is giving about the descriptions of the heavenly planets. The extraordinary opulence of the heavenly planets. And these planets are for very highly elevated persons. And he said you can read more about this in the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Even you can understand from even in the material world, there are much more opulent planets, but still it is within the material world. And then he also spoke about, the third point he spoke was the futility of material science in spiritual pursuits. That's the third point. Because he criticizes the journey to the moon and to the higher planets. Because, I remember it was around 1969, I was about 10 years old at that time. And my granny was illiterate, and we were all looking at the moon. And she was saying that, but you can't go there. It's not possible to go there, to the moon. So, again, Prabhupada, he shows the difference between materialistic approach and understanding the universe, through the scriptures, accepting the scriptures. Just like the moon is above the sun, right? You accept that, right? Do you accept that? Yes or no? Huh? It's above the sun. Is it? Yeah, it is above the sun. According, it's like 100,000 yojanas, or like it's I think it's 1.6 million above the sun. So the fourth point that we noted from the verse, that the paragraph that we read, the spiritual eligibility for higher realms, or going to the higher planets, even Swarga Loka, there must be some piety. You can't just go enter these planets. So how much of piety one must have to enter the moon planet? A lot of piety. Because those who are free from sinful desires, and Prabhupada is very specific, such as envy or crookedness. Like a snake-like type person. Snakes move like that. They have to be free from these things. So he gives a good understanding of people who could go to these planets. And then he speaks about, ultimately, the illusory of nature of material success. What is the success? You go up there and you bring some dust. What good it's for the people? So these are the points that we learn from that paragraph. So we're reading on. Despite his opulence, Prabhupada told us that the devotees are not all, despite this opulence, Prabhupada told us the devotees are not at all interested to go there. They have a much higher destination. They are interested to go to Vrindavan and become grass there. This is devotee. Just like Uddhava, as soon as he entered Vrindavan, he immediately fell down on the road, thinking that on this street Krishna has walked, his friends have walked, there are footprints. So this is the ambition of a devotee. They are not interested for diamond roads or pearl roads. No. Because in the heavenly planets, this is how the roads are. But a devotee, what is he interested in? Going to? Where does he want to go to? Go to Vrindavan. Yes, Vrindavan. He wants to go to Vrindavan. So what do we learn from this? We can, one, the devotee's humility and desire for service. Second point, we can note deep attachment to Krishna and his abode. That's the second point. And transcendence of material desires. That's the third point. And spiritual desires versus material desire. Because if we have material desires, as we learned earlier on, there's challenges. And which is the highest goal? Vrindavan. And I think Urmila Mataji was speaking about Vaikuntha also. And she was saying that it's very opulent, and sometimes, even as devotees, we may want to enjoy the opulence. Like you like good facility, branded stuffs, good facility. So you may not be a candidate for Vrindavan. Because the candidate for Vrindavan, he's not worried about all these things. Like, I've just come from Vrindavan a week ago, and for me, people normally ask me, which is the best place you like in Vrindavan? And I immediately respond, the Krishna Balaram temple is the best place. Because you got Prabhupada there, you got, the deities that were installed by him, you got his rooms there, his kitchen there, and everything is there. That's the best place to be. And in the morning, we can go and chant with Prabhupada in his samadhi. Around 4:10, we have our Mangal Arti there. And we're there before that, and we're chanting Hare Krishna. And there's so much ecstasy you feel. And then the sixth point was the supreme importance of devotional service. Because a devotee is not interested in anything except doing devotional service. And the key is bhakti yoga. And when you unpack that, when you unpack it, which you don't have time for, there's so many deep points just from the one paragraph, which will help you to understand the entrance to Vrindavan. And I was looking, for that verse, where where Uddhava wanted to become grass in Vrindavan. But it's in the 47th chapter of the 10th canto, and text number 61. But Prabhupada quotes it in a purport in the Antya Leela, chapter 7, text 47. He quotes this verse, and I'll read it. The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who are very difficult to give up. And they have forsaken the path of chastity to take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Krishna, which one should search for by Vedic knowledge. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to become one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, for the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. So that's the mood of Vrindavan, It's like, when we go to Vrindavan, like, when we go to places like Tia Kadamba, it's very beautiful, it's in the forest, very beautiful. And you can see, you can well imagine that, the cowherd boys are coming, and Radharani comes up from Javat, goes up to Nandagram, walking in the fields. This was all touched by Radha and Krishna and the cowherd boys. This is the mood, we should develop entering Vrindavan. And Prabhupada, I'll read the purport. This verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Uddhava. When Uddhava was sent by Krishna to see the condition of the gopis in Vrindavan, he stayed there for a few months in their association and always talked with them about Krishna. Although this greatly pleased the gopis and the other residents of Vrajabhumi, Vrindavan, Uddhava saw that the gopis were severely afflicted by their separation from Krishna. Their hearts were so disturbed that their minds were sometimes deranged. Observing the unalloyed devotion and love of the gopis for Krishna, Uddhava desired to become a creeper, a blade grass, or an herb in Vrindavan, so that sometimes the gopis would trample him and he would receive the dust of their lotus feet on his head. So this is how a devotee is meditating on Vrindavan, getting the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Continuing reading. Therefore, he said, a devotee avoids the association of those attracted to sense enjoyment, especially those who are attached to sex. He gave a one-word summary of material existence and said that by correct association, one becomes free of it. And he goes on explaining, and then it's quite long, but I'll just say in conclusion. His conclusion was that we should finish our business immediately in this life. Krishna consciousness means fully becoming detached with this material enjoyment. Simply become engaged in Krishna's service. Your life will be success. Thank you very much. That was that you were speaking, that 15 minutes, that short lecture. So he's saying what to do, and then we have to become free from sense gratification, specifically sex life. It's not easy. We've all gone through so many challenges in it ourselves. But we have to try to refrain from it, because to enter the spiritual world, one has to be free. And that training one is getting here. And even, if one thinks of the heavenly planets, or think of even Vaikuntha, the residents of Vaikuntha are more beautiful. They're so very beautiful and attractive. And the Bhagavatam, they give a description, which I'll just read. It is specifically mentioned here that a woman's large hips are very attractive and they stimulate a man's passion. But the wonderful feature of Vaikuntha is that although the women have large hips and beautiful faces and decorated with ornaments of emeralds and jewels, the men are so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that these beautiful bodies of women cannot attract them. How does that sound? You have to be so absorbed. So it's like we're always talking about becoming free from sex life, material desires. But the only way is to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. There's no other thing. But Prabhupada makes a nice point there. He says, and this is like kind of very interesting, and I found this interesting last night when I was reading it. There is enjoyment of association of the opposite sex. There is that enjoyment because you appreciate them. Shri Raghunath ki. There is that enjoyment in that sense, the association of the opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there is no need for sex pleasure. So they're not interested in this material pleasure. Sometimes even, even us, we have so much of difficulties in controlling our senses. But youngsters, generally if you're young and you have no taste in sex life, then it's easy to follow the vow of celibacy. If you didn't get into it, it's much easier to follow it. And then Prabhupada continues, he speaks about One who is attached to sex life is to be understood as devoid of knowledge. Knowledge must be followed by detachment. That is the way of self-realization. These two essentials for self-realization, knowledge and detachment, become manifest very quickly if one performs devotional service. So one need not separately endeavor for these, gaining knowledge and detachment, because as you engage in bhakti, these things automatically come. Therefore, it's not one of the items of devotional service, according to the nectar of devotion, knowledge and detachment. A person who is not disturbed even in the presence of causes of disturbance is called dhira. See, Yamuna Acharya says, since my heart has been overwhelmed by the devotional service of Lord Krishna, I cannot even think of sex life. And if thoughts of sex come upon me, I at once feel disgust. A devotee of the Lord becomes an elevated dhira by the simple process of meditating in eagerness on the lotus feet of the Lord. But there's so many nice other points we could discuss from the scriptures, but we won't do that. But we'll just, sometimes people join the movement, they become full-time devotees or resident devotees, and then they feel, oh, okay, all right, now I must become more renounced, I must put a saffron robe and, and then they get attached to the robes, attached to the dress, and then they find, Mother Urmila was discussing from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's purport on the Manashiksha, on different types of people, how they want recognition in different ways, and want and different types of devotees serve materialists and things like that. But in any case, even in Prabhupada's time, there was called the sannyas fever. I think that was also going on. People want to take sannyas. Shri Prabhu? The sannyas fever. So there was Hansadutta, who was Himavati's husband. He was always determined to take sannyas. So Prabhupada told him that you cannot take sannyas unless you get permission from your wife, if your wife agrees. So Himavati said, I don't agree, that my husband takes sannyas, because he was not advanced enough. But she's saying, but if you give him sannyas, then I accept. So, but Prabhupada said, no, you have to agree. And then she's saying, well, we're not so advanced enough. But if you give him sannyas, then I accept. So this went on for like 4 days, up and down. But she never agreed. So anyway, in the Mayapur festival in 1976, Hansadutta, he just jumped into the arena with his dyed cloth, and Prabhupada had given him sannyas. So then, you know how news travels. Your husband had taken sannyas. It was like very fast travel to her, and she got the message. And she naturally, a wife would be very hysterical and astonished, and she was, because she had not agreed, and she had not expected it. So she went, she went to Srila Prabhupada, and she said, I hate everyone, I hate everything in this material world. And then Prabhupada, as usual, his very nice answer. Prabhupada was, silent for a few minutes, and he said, very good, now you are making advancement. So, you have to have a sometimes people criticize us to say, well, we have a very pessimistic view of the material world. But there in the Gita, Prabhupada writes that you must have a pessimistic view of this material world if you want to make advancement. If you think that this place is a very nice place, then you'll remain. You must have that pessimistic view. So then the scene changes where Prabhupada has brought some mango ice cream and he took some. And then another conversation comes up, and I'll read this, which is more about the moon again and the other planets. The conversation started out with more critique on the Mars probe. We supplied some details culled from the newspapers, and always Srila Prabhupada was entirely skeptical about what he termed as a childish attempt and a complete waste of money. He has said, as much as 10 years ago, he told us, when they so-called went to the moon. Now he said there is no more talk of the moon. Yet so much money was spent. As far as he was concerned, they never went. He was surprised that people so readily accept the scientist's speculation. He laughed and said, we were fools and rascals for believing them. So, there again, because the moon is a heavenly planet. And the thing is, the moon is responsible for the vegetation on this earth planet. That is why you find farmers, they're looking at the moon and they're planting different phases of the moon. They would plant vegetables. Because the moon, it gives the juice of life. And so how can there be no life in a place, in the moon planet? It'll be contradictory. So, so many people have gone to the moon, and even now but Prabhupada said they, perhaps in different parts of the Bhagavatam, in different parts of the scriptures, he said they could have gone to Rahu's planet, which is between Earth and the moon planet or whatever. But Rahu's planet, which is they could have gone there. That's what his take on it. Anyway, then there's more talk, and I'll skip that. And then Prabhupada speaks about any process you accept rejecting devotional service, the result will be that there is no profit. So we have to be engaged entirely in devotional service. Then he got on to speaking of about religion. And what's the definition of religion? What's the definition of religion? To know God and to love Him. Huh? Yes. And then he started speaking about the Ramakrishna mission. But he had some strong words to say about him, and I won't mention it. Maybe. He said, he was a fool, illiterate rascal. He became God. They have no standard, and they're propagating Ramakrishna mission. As we are preaching Krishna is God, they are preaching Ramakrishna. And who's accepting them? For the last 100 years, they are preaching. So who has become a devotee of Ramakrishna? And then Prabhupada was speaking more about religion, and it came to the point where he asked the devotee to check in the dictionary, to get the meaning of what religion is. And it's quite interesting. One monastic condition, being a monk or a nun. Enter into a monastic order. That was one version. The second, practice of sacred rites. That was a second version. The third was one of the prevalent systems of faith and worship, example Christian, Mohammedan, etc. 4, human recognition of superhuman controlling power, and especially of a personal God entitled to obedience. Effect of such recognition on conduct and mental attitude. Prabhupada nodded at this. This is religion, personal conception of God. So yes, and Prabhupada liked that. And he spoke, if you're not a human being, if you're a human being, you must be religious. You must recognize somebody as a supreme controller. Otherwise you are a, what? Animal. These are strong words that Prabhupada used. So then anyway, on talking about Ramakrishna, not in this particular discussion, but other places, one person was asked, what is your opinion on the Ramakrishna mission? One person was asking Prabhupada, what is your opinion on the Ramakrishna mission? And Prabhupada said, if I say frankly, they distorted the Bhagavad Gita to the greatest extent. Yet, because they presented somebody as Ram, Krishna as God. Ram Krishna said that I am the same Krishna, I am the same Ram. And they accepted it. But one thing is, anybody can say that I am same Ram, I am the same Krishna. First of all, we have to see the proof. There are many ways to understand. So Ramakrishna Mission is pushing on this, I mean to say, the wrong idea. But another thing is that supposing this Ramakrishna is the same Krishna, then the philosophy is different. Ramakrishna's philosophy and Bhagavad Gita's philosophy is different because Ramakrishna says that you can accept any method, every method is all right. But Krishna says, only unto him, sarva dharman parityaja. Abandon all varieties of religion. Give up everything, simply surrender unto me. Now Krishna says, simply surrender unto me. And Ramakrishna says that you can accept any way. So which one will you accept? Krishna or Ramakrishna? What is your opinion? If something is spoken by Krishna and something spoken by Ramakrishna, so which one we shall prefer or accept? It's obvious we're going to accept from the Bhagavad Gita. So then he started, Prabhupada starts speaking about his God brothers. And he's criticizing his God brothers. But just to I make this point that when Prabhupada is criticizing his God brothers, it's like it's pleasurable in the sense that it is bona fide. So if somebody criticizes Prabhupada for criticizing his God brothers, that will constitute an offense. Remember that. So in his criticism to his own God brothers, according to his spiritual master, Prabhupada said, if one does not go out and preach, he will simply beg, eat and sleep, as all our God brothers are doing. They have got a little temple, a few devotees, and go and beg rice and cook and eat and sleep, that's all. Because our movement is to preach, it's to give people Krishna consciousness. And when I was staying up in a hotel in Johannesburg, there was no place in the temple, but anyway I had to live in a hotel. And I was reading on the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I picked this purport up, and which also Radhika Jivan brought to my attention. And I'll read this purport. It says about, it's mainly applicable to us, the ISKCON devotees. I'll just read a few points. Association is very meaningful. Therefore, ISKCON tries to perfect one who enters the society. The members of this society should always remember that the society is not like a free hotel. You know this? It's not a free hotel. You can't come and live in a temple and then just eat and sleep and be merry. This is a hedonistic way of life. That's not very good. And Prabhupada wrote it in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. But the same thing he's talking about what his god brothers would do, but in a more detailed way. And Prabhupada, Pushta Krishna, he responded, he said, it is like being dead. We just eat, sleep. There's no fighting spirit, Prabhupada said. He was neither facetious nor cynical, just quietly a matter of fact. Like just make a deity and show. So he's talking about how, in India when you go, they have the deity, you give some money, they may, give you darshan, they may give you some garland, they may give you some, if you give some extra donation, they may give you some extra things. And you're very fortunate and you get darshan and you go. And then he was talking about his own godbrother, Tirtha Maharaj, that he captured the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya by some court order, by the favor of the court. But Prabhupada said, people will come and they will pay something and that will be my income for my family. That's what his godbrother would use the money for, as a means of livelihood. He has no devotion. He wanted it as a means of income. That's another thing that we have to be very cautious of, because we don't come to the temple to do business. Because once devotees get into business or live in a temple, they'll be gone. I was just telling Radhika Jeevan that that's not what we're meant to do. Run businesses, because you will become duplicitous. Because you have to make profit. Because you're running business. And that's those are the qualities of a Vaishya. You came to the temple to become a Brahmana. So you'll become duplicitous. So that's not something what a devotee does who live in a temple. Especially. Then he said he wanted as a means of income, like the Vrindavan Goswami, Navadip Goswami. Little devotion, automatically they are after all worshipping the deity, but their purpose is different. So we have to know what our purpose is. And here we see, what do we see? The main theme, genuine devotion versus materialism. Because here, his godbrother had captured this land, birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. With what motivation? What was his primary motivation? To get income. So you can't come in the temple and do those things. That's not what it's meant for. And then he was talking about, they didn't have fighting spirit, no enthusiasm, just make a show. So many different things as a means of livelihood. And in another conversation, not particular, in this Transcendental Diary, Prabhupada was speaking about Tirtha Maharaj. And he said, Tirtha Maharaj was accusing me that I've got 2 crores of rupees from the American government to start this movement. So 2 crores. Because why? Prabhupada was living in a very opulent place. Everything was very nice. Because nobody was living in such nice facilities. Because people will always find fault. But I don't know if it's really connected to the birthplace, but really in one case, Prabhupada speaks about, he says, I'll read it. Prabhupada, in that paper he wrote, in case I die, this is talking about Bhakti Siddhanta, in case I die, these 3 men will be trustees, and the majority will be effective. So that scrap of paper, Tirtha Maharaj, he kept it. And later on, Guru Maharaj wanted to make a constitution, but he avoided. But actually, after his demise, that scrap of paper was presented in the High Court, and the property was given. So we can learn from this, these from what Prabhupada is bringing to our attention. And then Prabhupada is speaking like how, he he put a temple in New Vrindavan, and that's in such a remote place. And he was establishing centers in such remote places. But still, Prabhupada's centers, many people were coming. Whatever Prabhupada constructed, many people were coming. Even more than going to the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, even up till now. Thousands of people are coming to our temple. Thousands. Every day we have. In Mayapur also. Almost millions of people are coming. But he was doing, because Prabhupada followed very strictly the process and was giving Krishna consciousness in a very pure way, without any adulteration. Then, I'll skip a little. He talks about how his godbrother's temple were all deserted. And then he speaks about, he says they make it a money-making machine. And then he was saying that money will come if one is very sincere and have faith in Krishna. They're not basing their faith on a high court judgment and you get a land. You're basing it on faith on the deity, on the Guru and the deity and the Vaishnavas. So there's so many lessons to learn from this. Also, when you read it, we shouldn't make this a money-making machine when we build a temple. They do not know that money will ultimately come if you're sincere. You haven't got to make it a machine. Krishna will send. You just have to have faith. You don't have faith in your own abilities, but you have faith in Krishna. Because when we have faith just in our own abilities and not on Krishna, then we may run into some difficulty. Like I went to one place in, I was looking for this place where Raghunath Bhatta had his, bhajan kutir, and it's in a house now, it's like a little house, and where the Bhagavatam is, that he should read to Lord Chaitanya. So one night I was looking for it, and I finally saw this place. And I entered in. You could go there. It's not open to public so much, but you still go there. But they don't allow people to come like visitors. That they don't allow. You just like pilgrims just moving around Vrindavan. They don't allow them in, unless you're like a sadhu, Vaishnav. So and it's quite, it's got huge gates. But I entered through one, and then I went through, and I went into this place, and the priest, the first thing he told me, that there's no money box here. And there's no place to give money. He said, because we worship the deity, we worship Raghunath Bhatta, we worship the acharyas. We don't want money. How's that for India? So, anyway, he was like, then he showed me he made me come the next day also. So we was going to seeing the Bhagavatam scripts that, it's on leaves written, and where where Raghunath Bhatta would read to Lord Chaitanya in a very beautiful, melodies, very emotional, yeah. So it was so wonderful. Then he gave me a book in Hindi about Raghunath Bhatta, was the lineage, and very, very, very interesting. So then we're coming to time almost. Then Prabhupada goes on to speaking about Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, of their practices and their contribution to spiritual life. But Prabhupada said that he never compromised. All my speaking is also no compromise. Ye is Guru, ye is Krishna, ye is God. Ye is Vedanta, real version they neglect, and they stick to rascal's version. Sarikya Bhasha, all over the world. And Prabhupada was speaking about Ramanujacharya, and he said, people don't accept Ramanujacharya because he's a Vaishnav. But Mayavad philosophy is spreading, And then he speaks a lot about Mayavad philosophy. And then there was an interesting there was a devotee called Rupa Vilas, one of Prabhupada's disciple, and there was the discussion was on Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, and also the study of Vedanta. But he said they could not understand, and Prabhupada is saying they couldn't understand. They don't understand this philosophy. But then Prabhupada put us in the spot, put the disciples on the spot, he said, and I'll read it. He asked us, why they cannot understand? He liked to put us on the spot to see what we come up with. One of the devotees cited a verse from the Gita, Naham prakashya sharvasya yoga maya samvrita. That because of yoga maya, the illusory potency, they are bewildered. But Prabhupada wasn't satisfied with the answer or other answer that was offered. Because his Mayavadis, they covered, and the devotees were giving different answers. And finally, one devotee he sat upright, and he said, because they haven't got Bhakti Vedanta. They don't have Bhakti Vedanta. Prabhupada said, yeah is the answer. Like sometimes there was another person who said, some people know the conclusion of the scriptures, but they don't have devotion. He says, I'm Vedanta, and you're Bhakti. So Bhakti Vedanta. So you need Bhakti Vedanta. You need a person like Prabhupada. And he smashed all these impersonalistic ideas, Mayavad philosophy, like that. And even when he was invited, there's so many different pastimes, about Mayavadis and Prabhupada's interaction with them. He was very cordial to sometime, and sometime he was very heavy, chopping them. And in one instance, he was invited by one follower of Gandhi, and there was a Gita recitation, and Prabhupada led a kirtan. The devotees had a kirtan, and he was so ecstatic. And the Mayavadi, he was just meant to speak, but then he saw this kirtan was so ecstatic, so he concocted some mantra on the spot, and he tried to rile the devotees to get into this. It didn't work. Prabhupada in between said, right, start chanting. He didn't bother about him, chanting Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada dealt with Mayavadis differently. There's many. I had lots of experiences myself with Mayavadis. But one instance when I took some devotees and one person said he's God. I was really a young child, and there were many. There was a program of sannyasis. They were like having it was a conference. And I never knew, one devotee said, he couldn't make it. He said me to go. I thought you just take one Bhagavad Gita and you give a talk. When I went there, I saw all these people with theses and all prepared with their notes. And I went with a few people, but I was quite amazed when we asked a child, who are you? Young. He said, I'm God. And there's another devotee there. She started crying. A couple of devotees, Rohini Nandan was there, one of the devotees, but the devotee started crying, and I was wondering why. But later, when I read in the CC, and I picked this verse up last night, the Mayavadi philosophy tries to establish that the living entity is only imaginary, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is under the influence of Maya. Hearing this kind of commentary breaks the heart and life of a devotee. Breaks the heart and life of a devotee. So much can be said about Prabhupada and his pastimes. I will stop here, it's 8:30. I'm on time. Hare Krishna, any comments, or anybody would like to make some comments if you feel it's necessary. If not, we close. Yes, Shruti Prabhu? You need the microphone. You need the microphone. Oh, yes. Hare Krishna. There's another one.
Yeah, it's meeting with Prabhupada's godbrothers. It's interesting because they making up the things that, he got this from the government, because he was asking them to please help him out. But one thing that was interesting, like I said, I said it in one of the seminars there, that we went to the temple in Mumbai. Prabhupada took us to the Gaudiya Math, and one of his godbrothers took me aside and said, "I'll tell you something your spiritual master will probably never tell you." He said, as a householder, he almost single-handedly supported this temple. So he was giving them all the support, and he was doing what Bhaktisiddhanta wanted. Bhatta Maharaj went to England, and he was given money by Bhaktisiddhanta, but he did nothing. So Prabhupada brought them all together when he was going to lay the cornerstone for Mayapur. And it was brilliant the way he did it. He says, now that we're all together, the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta will stay together. And instead of working as splinter movements, we'll work as one movement. And he said, we'll do like our spiritual master wanted. We'll form a governing body commission and work cooperatively. Because Bhaktisiddhanta wrote a handwritten will, so it can't be fake. And the second line said, form a governing body and work cooperatively. But somehow they didn't do that. Tirtha tried to go and say, well, he's a trustee. It's like there's people who are book BBT trustees, right? That doesn't mean they can take over the movement. Prabhupada said that he wanted a governing body, just like Bhaktisiddhanta. So they didn't follow that simple instruction of management, which is kind of mind-boggling. First, Tirtha wanted to be the acharya, and then the others decided they had someone to be an acharya, and that person fell down and got some woman pregnant, and that woman poisoned her own son, and so they had all kinds of difficulties because they didn't follow the basic instruction of the Guru. But Prabhupada got that instruction, and he went to preach in the West without the help of anybody.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's good. You know, I was in a shop in Loy Bazaar, and a shopkeeper, we were just having a discussion. We were speaking about some saintly people. I won't mention the names. Anyway, we were speaking about some saintly devotees in Vrindavan, and then the shopkeeper intercepted me and he said, let me tell you, all these people who are very famous and like popular in Vrindavan, as time goes, when they leave the body, after that everything is finished. So I looked at him and I thought that was a good thing, he said. Then I thought more deeply, but he said, but Prabhupada's movement goes on. And I was quite surprised, and I said, then I thought, yes, the reason is because we have the GBC. We have even we make mistakes, we made a lot of mistakes in the past, and we may make mistakes in the future. But we look, so many people are joining the Hare Krishna movement. So many, millions of people. Every day somebody is joining some temple in the world. But Prabhupada is gone, but still people are joining.
That's the whole difference with the GBC. It's the movement and the philosophy that are important. But when we form our own movement, now I become important. We see it's like some swamis have decided to go off on their own and they form their own movement. Even if they do something wrong, they may continue to be in charge of that group because they're the only authority. Whereas in ISKCON, the GBC is the authority. You start messing up, it doesn't matter how many disciples you are, they decide that you're not a guru anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that. That's a wonderful point.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, you're speaking about like Prabhupada's presence in Vrindavan. But in the 70s, it was just a little village with one or two cars. And after Prabhupada established ISKCON and the Krishna Balaram Mandir, and everything just sprang up. The businessmen became very enriched. And even today you go, it's just like, so all that. And they keep pictures of Prabhupada in the shops. They owe him that much. But I don't know how much their devotion for Prabhupada is like. But he's worshipable like that because he enriched them in so many ways.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you. Correct, yes.
Then the other thing you were speaking about the moon, there's so many conspiracy stories about that, theories. And one book I read, I don't know, the two persons who work for NASA, they compiled this book. They never went to the moon. They wrote this book, and they pointed out so many discrepancies in the poor workmanship of the spaceships, and there were so many disasters also. Apollo 13, Apollo, so many astronauts perished in that. And to sum it all, they said they spent $75 billion of taxpayers' money for the mission just to go to the moon and bring back, as you said, some rocks.
Some rock, yeah.
75, and that justifies, isn't just so much of taxpayers' money was spent on that and the mission. And of course, the conspiracy was that it was a stage thing. It was, so many stories we're hearing that it was some Bollywood movie type, isn't landing on some desert somewhere, something set up like the moon. Who knows?
I'm remembering the song "Man in the Moon."
Prabhupada was watching it, and I think two things. Another thing, when they say it's higher, it's like the up-down. The moon is above the sun, but not as far as distance. It's like Pretoria may be farther north from here than someplace in Australia is, but the east-west direction, it's different. The other thing is, I was watching as a child the moon landing, and so was Prabhupada, and they were showing a simulation, and they said, now we're shifting from the simulation to the real moon landing. And it looked like the same exact thing. So Prabhupada says, it doesn't, how do we know they went? So it's not an absolute thing. Plus, at the time when they switched from the simulation to the real thing, they looked exactly the same. Now they don't do that. They just show the moon landing. They don't say, here's the simulation, and now here's the landing. So of course, even as a child, I thought, well, the real thing looks like the simulation. How am I to think it's real? So it wasn't an illogical conclusion at the time, but when they only show you part of it.
Hare Krishna. In terms of the moon, it's not just moon. They always test. They always test everyone. We have become specimens. They did the same thing with HIV. They did the same thing with COVID. None of these two things are real, but we fall for it because they take the majority intentions. If the majority says, yeah, we fearfully believe what you are telling us, because remember, we have dedicated our lives to what they say. They have an IP system of going to school for these kids. So you become indoctrinated from there, and then our mothers and fathers, they sit down and watch soapies every day. So whatever they see on the screen has become real all the time. So you have a majority of people that's already doing that. So therefore you're gonna fall for it. And it's funny, in the morning I was listening to Prabhupada, he was actually mentioning the moon. There was a reporter who was asking about the landing of the moon. Prabhupada said, do you want me to to tell you the truth, or you want me to lie to you? The reporter said, no, you can tell me the truth. And Prabhupada said, it's just a waste of money, unnecessary waste of money. To the reporter, he wasn't playing around. And sometimes I think this is required, that we have to hit ourselves with the truth. Why do I say that? Is because we could hand ourselves the responsibility of assisting human beings out there to distribute the truth according to how Prabhupada saw it. And Prabhupada saw life to be simple instead of being overly complicated. Prabhupada said you could scratch yourself like this, but then here you are, you're scratching yourself like this. For example, there is many of us who plant lawn and trees with no fruits, and then we buy fruits at the shops, which to me doesn't make sense, because when you buy a fruit, you're buying petrol, the driver, plastic, just to get what's inside the plastic, and the old, and you have the price of that. But anyway, this is what I want to comment on. I actually wanted to comment on time. You said earlier about being on time, etc. You said earlier about being on time. When you started the class, you were talking about time.
Oh, we're talking about Prabhupada's time. Yeah, the talk was for 15 minutes. It was short.
Yes, the talk was shorter. Yet every time Prabhupada finished the class, chant Hare Krishna. Every time Prabhupada finished the class, he would say, now you can chant Hare Krishna. Because Prabhupada would do a 30-minute class or 45. Rarely he will make 55, but it will be 30, 45. And then he would say, thank you very much, or he would say, chant Hare Krishna. Why I say that is because sometimes we chant Hare Krishna less.
Sorry?
Sometimes Hare Krishna lesser.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. We have to chant Hare Krishna more. You know, so coincidentally, that where I meant to finish was talking about the mantra. And I didn't speak too much about it because I want to finish on time. because whenever I speak, I finish on time, because I'm considerate about your situation also. Yeah, you know, we spoke about compassion and various other things.
Hare
Yes.
Krishna. Thank you, Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu. So, of the moon is difficult for a person of our position, because we don't have the proofs, and what is written in the sastras, we either accept or we think, okay, is it true? But if you look at the sastras has also told us that the urine of a cow is pure, and the scientist has proven it. It has also told us that if we want the truth, we go to the mother, and the mother will give you the truth,
Yeah,
and
sure.
then you know. So, long story cut short, you can accept the sastras consistently, or you can choose and this way and that way, in which case then you're never going to get to the final destination.
Yeah. See, we have faith in the scriptures. Even the devotee Purushottam left. Shri Prabhu, that devotee Purushottam, he left, right? He left. And Prabhupada predicted when the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam comes out, many people will leave, because it's not in keeping with the modern science and modern education. They will leave, and it was true. But he left. But Prabhupada said, how could he not accept the scripture? Because our faith is in the scripture. So that's like me, I'm convinced of the scripture. I wouldn't accept the other version. And we all we are entitled to our own opinions and what we accept. But we should accept the scripture. Because that's Mother Vedas, you're accepting the mothers as the authority. So that's what we do. That's how Prabhupada explained it to him. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Prem Vikash. Shri Prabhu. Thank you. Shri Prabhupada ki.